do you remember Labour's pledge? We're going to stop using hotels, no more hotels. This has resulted in them having to rush out to find thousands of extra hotel beds. This is just one massive, great humiliation for Starmer, two-tier Keir and his hapless...
Starmer continues to make one mistake after another, demonstrating a complete lack of common sense and logic in his decisions. Today we will analyse his latest statements together. Our focus will be on his migration policy, which raises more questions than answers. But there is also good news. His recent statements have only increased the likelihood of his imminent resignation. We start watching the first scene.
That's what the story is with this Labour government. Everything they seem to do is infuriating, and this one has really got my goat, as they say. As I said before the break, Isabel, 62,801 migrants who would have been permanently barred from settling in Britain will now be allowed to stay as a result of changes to the asylum system introduced by Keir Starmer. This has been revealed in a report by the Refugee Council, which reveals that tens of thousands of small boat channel crossers who arrived in Britain illegally will be granted asylum because Starmer scrapped the Rwanda scheme on day one of his administration.
The Labour government, as soon as it took power into its own hands, immediately stopped deportations to Rwanda, demonstrating a complete misunderstanding of the situation. Starmer not only abandoned this scheme, but also completely destroyed everything related to it, including flights and related aid. This decision is simply outrageous, especially considering that the scheme has begun to show real results. To remove this issue from the agenda at the very moment when we are beginning to see the first signs of positive changes is not only an absurd, but also a harmful step on the part of the Labour Party. This decision casts a shadow on the ability of Starmer and his team to make informed decisions and solve real problems. In addition, Starmer promised to restore the broken asylum system, but unfortunately he is completely unable to do so.
Keir Starmer, in an act of breathtaking stupidity, made it one of the first things he did was scrapping that law. So that removes a deterrent, along with removing Rwanda as a deterrent. That means there is no deterrent. And now, instead of thinking about how he's going to actually send all these people home, kick them out, deport them, whatever language you want to use. As you say, he's going round asking the Home Office to put out the SOS to their hotel scoper-outers to find more accommodation. And here's the absolutely ridiculous thing. There are now hotels that were used under the last government for migrants, that the last government said, actually, we don't want to use hotels anymore because voters are getting really hacked off with this. So we're gonna actually get rid of the migrants. We're ending your contract with the hotel.
The Starmer has signed a shocking agreement to deport migrants from the Chagos Islands to St. Helena. The government of St. Helena will allocate an impressive £6.65 million for the reception of migrants. The island, with a population of less than 4,500, is expected to host migrants for about 18 months until the agreement is fully implemented. I think the people living there will experience mental suffering. In this small community, everyone knows each other by name, and a sudden influx of new residents can destroy the usual way of life that has existed for decades. In addition, this step was a real blow to the indigenous people of the Chagos Islands.
They then spent thousands of pounds putting the hotel back together to be a hotel, because generally these migrants cause quite a lot of damage. And now the hotels are being reconverted to have migrants again. I mean, this is complete and utter insanity.
Well, if Starmer can't spot that this is an humiliating failure for him, then there's something wrong with him upstairs.
Oh, he can't spot it.
I think that, well,
get it.
This is terrifying then. In the past 2 weeks, by the way, 2,265 more migrants have sailed from...
The UK found itself in the epicenter of the outbreak of the illegal migration crisis, which reached its peak on the 18th of June. On this day, a record wave of daily border crossings was recorded. 900 illegal migrants arrived on British territory. Since the beginning of the year, the total number of migrants has amounted to 18,500 people, which is 13% higher than in the same period last year, and this figure continues to grow rapidly. The authorities spend millions of pounds every day to accommodate refugees in hotels.
This is resulting in, do you remember Labour's pledge? We're going to stop using hotels, far more hotels. This has resulted in them having to rush out to find thousands of extra hotel beds for migrants. They're having to be laid on amid an ongoing surge of unlawful arrivals. This is just one massive, great humiliation for Starmer, two-tier Keir and his
And the British authorities have made a promise that has become an empty phrase, namely to stop using hotels to accommodate asylum seekers and reduce the number of applications for refugee status. However, the figures speak for themselves. Keeping these people in hotels costs £6 million a day, and the total cost has already reached £2.28 billion. Illegal migrants do not seem to be paying attention to the changes in the government. In just one day, 400 people landed on the shores of Britain without documents and visas. They obviously hadn't heard that Starmer was going to address this issue. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage decided to take the situation into his own hands and went by boat to patrol the coast of England. He reported that he noticed a small boat with 45 people on it and an escort vessel following it. These were the French, and this state of affairs persists despite the £500 million that we have allocated to them. However, the only really effective deterrent for migrants remains the weather.
Of this, is there any suggestion that any minister will resign? No, because 62,801 is now just a rounding error in this gigantic catastrophe that we're facing.
Yeah, and as we discussed last night, Keir Starmer, you're probably not watching, but if any of your cronies or acolytes are watching, or even if you're watching, this, unless you do something about it, will lose you the next election. 100%. Why you Westminster lot can't get it through your thick heads that people in this country care about this. They want this solved. And you shrugging your shoulders in your elite North London houses saying, well, it doesn't really affect us and, you know, there are more important issues. For millions of people in this country, there aren't any more important issues. It is the most important issue. And if you don't get to grips with it, you're going to pay the price.
The migration crisis in the UK could have catastrophic consequences for us. It all started with a horrific crime in Southport that was attributed to a migrant or radical Muslim. However, it later turned out that the perpetrator came from a family from Rwanda. But devastating effects could no longer be stopped. Why did this happen? The first reason was the lack of a clear reaction from the official authorities to the crime and the spread of disinformation. All this led to discontent and protests that swept the entire country. As a result, dozens of people, including police officers, were injured and hundreds were detained. The second factor is the accumulated resentment in society both against migration and against government policies that do not create conditions for the integration of migrants. These feelings have been accumulating for years, but the authorities ignored them, which only fueled the protests. So the third reason is corruption, which has been reigning in the migration system for a long time. This allows many foreigners to stay in the country, not only on study visas, but also on various social programs. The lack of normal conditions for integration only exacerbates radicalization among immigrants. In an environment where it was necessary to quickly resolve the problems that arose, the government instead created forces designed to protect Muslim communities from attacks. However, such measures will not stop the protests and violence. Since 2010, the crime rate in the UK has doubled, and in some small towns there are organized ethnic gangs, for example, from Pakistan or Afghanistan.
Yeah, and do you know the last time a government minister had to resign over immigration? It was actually in 2004 when a Labour minister called Beverly Hughes had to resign over an immigration scandal.
The press officer at one point, didn't she?
I looked back at this immigration scandal. It was so tame. You know, this was a kind of everyday occurrence now. It was a minor thing about a few Eastern Europeans who were fiddling their paperwork to get work visas here. A handful of people. This is now happening on an industrial scale up and down this country.
Beverly Hughes, shaken from responsibility, resigned after the Home Secretary told her about a shocking visa fraud scheme allowing citizens of Romania and Bulgaria to invade the UK unhindered. She bitterly denied that she had any idea what was going on, but her departure from office was not a salvation for the government's reputation. Pressure was increased on Blunkett and an immediate independent investigation into the immigration service was demanded. Her dismissal was the result of the persistent intervention of Bob Ainsworth, the deputy Tea Party organizer of the government. After his trip to Romania and Bulgaria, He was shocked that the UK migration services seemed to be mindlessly churning out fake visa applications, endangering the security of the country. In her emotional resignation statement, Beverly Hughes said, "I have always believed that in my political and personal life, nothing is more important than my honesty. And although I did not intentionally deceive anyone, I came to the bitter conclusion that I cannot continue to hold the post of Mr. Migration with a clear conscience." So write your opinion in the comments. See you.